Hello, my name is Stephen Redman and welcome to another episode of Pastor's Library. This is the channel where we talk about everything to do with theology books, books that might have appeared on a reading list for a seminary course, for a bachelor's degree or master's degree in biblical studies or theology, or perhaps just books that have caught your eye on your pastor's bookshelf. Whatever it is, we're here to help, to advise, to drop some ideas into your head. And dare I say, we're here probably to help you spend a load more money as well, which... anyway, that's books for you, isn't it? So, today we want to talk about a textbook, a book that is a great introduction to the Old Testament. And this is the new 4th edition of a survey of the Old Testament, which is by Andrew Hill and John Walton. John Walton will be known to many of you for his great commentaries and works on the Old Testament, particularly the Pentateuch. So, this book is a 2023 release. It's April in England, and we've just got it, really, because we tend to get it a little bit later than the Americans get it. But this is a Zondervan publication on the Zondervan academic print, and it's 558 pages. It's hardback, and there's a little bit of movement on the price, which is good because this is a heavy book, it's a solid book, and it's quite good that you can, if you're careful, shop around and get a good deal on it. This book is recommended by a whole host of theologians. Some of the names you will know who have endorsed it are Tremper Longman III, Beth Stovall, John Oswalt, Kevin Anderson, Ian Provan, loads more, but those are people that whose opinion that I would respect, and they all speak very highly of it. Somewhere I've got the old 3rd edition, but this 4th edition is a noticeable improvement, and I would suggest to you it's affordable enough to get as a replacement. This is ideal if you're doing any sort of course or any personal study that's an overview of the Old Testament. Most of the chapters are related to book titles, so Isaiah, Jeremiah, so on. Every one of them is divided into the purpose statement of the author, God's presence in the book, the composition of the text, its background, its purpose, its message, structure and organisation. It lists major themes of the book, and it ends with questions for further personal study or for discussion groups. So this is actually a book you could work through in small groups as well. But having said that, it's a little bit more expensive than the standard small group purchase. But there you have it. Every chapter also ends with a reading list, which is very good. I'm always a little bit like that about reading lists at the end of each chapter. But of course, as this is about studying a book or a subject to do with the Old Testament, it does really make sense to have the lists in each chapter rather than at the end of the book. There are also some additional chapters, things like a chapter on the geography of the Old Testament, which is relevant to the text, the archaeology of the Old Testament. And that's really interesting because it asks us some important questions. It asks, what can archaeology do for the Bible? What it can't do for the Bible, and what it has done for the Bible. And I found it very easy to engage with that. I found it very accessible. Archaeology is not one of my main interests, but I found that chapter to be very helpful. It sort of finishes with the journey to Jesus, which you can imagine what that's about. So what I would say is that this, which is probably a standard text if you are studying anything to do with Old Testament survey, This is a really, really well-written book. It's a very good book. And there are lots more things I can say about it if we go into a bit of detail. For example, if you read most books, they have a unique section which is to do with the content. So, for example, Job has a section on punitive retribution. Now, the only thing that shocked me a little bit, and it does shock me whenever I occasionally read this in books, is it says that Job is suggesting that punitive retribution is the way God works, and that we should accept this of God and believe in it, which is the exact opposite of, in my opinion, what the book of Job was written. I would say that the book of Job was written to actually disprove the pagan theory of punitive retribution. And you will see that in a lot of the main Job commentaries, the bigger ones, the more modern ones, you will see that. I would have to say that as a rule, that's a belief that goes along with Calvinism, but it doesn't necessarily do so. And I would think that one of these people has clearly got this idea in their heads, when actually other books will tell you the exact opposite. So you have to bear that in mind. If you look on the detailed section on Proverbs, it has a whole section on human sexuality, and it highlights key verses in Proverbs that give us wisdom on the sort of way we should behave as Christians, as worshippers of Yahweh. If you look at Lamentations, that has a section on human suffering. And it's, again, I slightly question the ethos of the person that's written it, but generally that's a helpful insight into human suffering. And perhaps the only other one we'll look at right now, because obviously there are a lot of books we could read these in, but in Amos, it has the section dealing on social justice, how we should treat the poor, and the homeless, and so on. All I can say to you is I really think this book is positive, helpful, as long as you approach it knowing that it may not have the same lens that you engage with Scripture with, but it's definitely a good text for people doing an overall study of the Old Testament. Now, if you've liked what I've had to say today, please give us a thumbs up on YouTube. It helps the algorithm. If you've got a comment to make, leave it in the comments below. I do try to get back to everybody. And really, just make sure you've subscribed and clicked on the bell, because that way you will be notified as soon as we launch another episode of Pastor's Library. So, a good book by Hill and Walton. I hope this is worth your time, and I pray that it will be a blessing to you if you engage with it. And until next time, everyone, bye!